Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. I'm thrilled to be joined by my next guest, who is a very well-regarded scholar in residence at the Forreston Institute. Professor Lou Falik, thank you so much for joining us on Get Down to Business.
You're very welcome.
So,
pleased to be able to talk to you.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Falik, we've been talking. I've been hearing a little bit about this experience called MLE, which I think stands for the mediated learning experience, and how it enhances somebody's performance in business and, frankly, other areas of life. Dr. Falik, please demystify this concept for us.
Well, it's no mystery because all learning has to have a quality of mediated learning experience in it. And mediation is the way in which we help people to understand more deeply the reasons for their decisions, why they think and act the way they do, how to overcome limitations or blockages in their thinking or in their behavior. And it's a well-developed, carefully designed set of parameters. And we use the word parameter because it's not a cookbook. It's not based on recipes. You do this, I say that. You do this, I say this. It's based on ways of helping people to go deeper into their reasons for thinking, how they make decisions, the consequences of their decisions.
And by going through all of those steps, the goal is to become better in life. Because often we associate that term learning. You think of kids going to school, they learn. Some people continue on for higher education. But really, at some point, I guess some people think that the learning stops. Dr. Falik, you're essentially arguing, no, the learning doesn't stop. We have to learn from our behavior so we can improve our behavior, whether it's in business or our professional life.
And it goes even farther because not only are we able to improve our behavior, we are also able to restructure our brains. Our brains are the most plastic of our organisms, more so than any other organism in the human body. And one of the things that Professor Feuerstein started with before he formulated the processes of mediated learning experience, the way in which we teach, the way in which we interact, the first thing he did was formulate the idea of structural cognitive modifiability, that all people, no matter what age you are, no matter what kind of limitation you have, physical or educational, every individual has the ability to be modified, not only in their behavior, but also in the structure of their brains. And by that I mean, we can create new neurons. We can create new pathways. We can improve the speed with which information is processed. And we do this through external stimulation. We are experiencing a revolution in understanding how learning occurs.
So I must ask, as we have this conversation in April of 2018, we were talking a lot about AI and artificial intelligence and how machines essentially are doing a lot of the thinking for us. Does that mean that our brains are not being stimulated or exercised enough?
Well, there are two ways of thinking about that issue. I was just reading an article in Time Magazine, current issue of Time Magazine, where they're talking about artificial intelligence. And the scientists are beginning to feel that the devices for artificial intelligence will actually enhance our ability to learn and develop if we organize our experience to do so. You can get dependent on devices. You can stop thinking. People are going to lose the ability to read maps because you don't have to read a map and plan ahead anymore. You just punch a few things into your cell phone and it tells you where to go and how to do it. So on the one hand, the revolution in sciences may create dependency and a lack of learning facility. But on the other hand, we can deepen tremendously our understanding of the world. And this was understood many years ago. 20 years ago, one of the first Feuerstein interventions in business and industry was in the Motorola Corporation in Chicago, where we train middle-level managers in mediated learning experience and how to use thinking tools to enhance the production line performance. In other countries as well, but I thought that given who I'm talking to and where I'm talking, the Chicago experience is very meaningful.
In fact, down the road is Motorola. Fascinating. So, Dr. Falik, it's interesting because you mentioned it earlier that we have so many things being thrown at us professionals on a daily basis. We have to make decisions about how we gather information. What's relevant and irrelevant for the business, how we prioritize, how we assess different needs, and certainly something that I know all of our listeners struggle with, and we've talked about it quite a bit on the program, is time management and all of the factors and calculations that go into it. So, of course, in a few minutes, we're going to ask you to share how people can learn more, how people can get in touch, how they can perhaps start that road to call it self-improvement. But what advice do you have for our listeners tomorrow when they go to work on Monday morning? What sort of things can they do to exercise their brain and start to prioritize and process information in a different way?
Wow, that's a big question, and it would take a lot more time for me to comfortably answer it, given the situation. But it's looking at what we call cognitive functions. How do you assess, how do you gather information? How do you use the information you've gathered to identify what is the problem that you are needing to deal with? And then how do you bring that information and a process of what we call elaborative thinking into play? There are games, there are tools that will look like games to the non-initiated, but continuing to exercise our brains through things like crossword puzzles, various kinds of interactive games, even the games that we can play on our smartphones, on our devices. I like to think about it as gymnastics for the brain. Now, if there are people who have limitations, they haven't learned as well, they have areas where they don't feel like they have skills to concentrate or focus or make decisions, then there are Feuerstein programs that can be used. And there are several people in the Chicago area who can help people get in touch. Looking at Feuerstein on the internet, there are some fabulously important projects going on in South Chicago, helping people enhance their vocational skills through learning mathematical and decision-making processes coming out of Chicago State College. So there are a lot of options that are available, but it's really opening oneself to an understanding of the ability to learn, which is not restricted to age, which is not restricted to prior educational experiences, or to physical or other kinds of limitations.
Well, Professor Falik, since we are indeed running out of time, and already you've shared so much great, so many great nuggets of advice and information. You are the senior scholar in residence at the Feuerstein Institute. Feuerstein is a concept that some of our listeners may be familiar with, but others may not. If folks want to learn more about the approach, the methodology, where can they discover some more?
Go on the internet. Google Feuerstein, Google cognitive modifiability, and there are other programs out there. There are other ways of doing it out there, but we're doing some things in North Side Chicago with parents and teachers. We're doing things in South Chicago, as I said, with vocational training. So there are activities, and I'd be, more than happy to continue this discussion at a later point with you and your audience.
Well, we look forward to having you back on. Dr. Lou Falik, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Coming up after headlines and short break, we've got more for you on Get Down to Business. You don't want to miss it, Chicago. Don't touch that dial. Thank you, Dr. Falik. We'll be right back.
Not a day goes